The war room on Lunar Base hummed with tension, the air thick with the scent of ozone and stale coffee. Holographic star maps flickered across the central display, casting eerie red light across the faces of the assembled officers. Captain Ryan Blake stood with his arms crossed, studying the swarm of crimson markers creeping inward from the edge of the solar system. Each one represented a Vorac warship. Admiral Krell's chitinous fingers tapped impatiently against the polished metal table. The Zephyrian's compound eyes reflected the holographic display, his mandibles twitching as he processed the data. "Your defenses are primitive," he hissed, the translator implant in his throat converting his clicks into guttural standard. "The Vorac consume worlds. They will not stop for mercy." Blake didn't look away from the display. "Good, neither do we." A murmur rippled through the human officers. Krell's antennae stiffened. His exoskeleton shifting in what Blake had learned was the Zephyrian equivalent of disbelief. "You do not understand," Krell insisted. "This is not a battle. This is an extinction event. The Vorac do not conquer, they devour." Lieutenant Chen, Blake's tactical officer, leaned forward. "Then we make them choke on us." Krell's mandibles parted in what might have been a sigh. "Sentiment. Emotion. This is why your species was never taken seriously by the Federation." Blake finally turned, his boots clicking against the reinforced lunar plating. "Admiral, with all due respect, we didn't ask for your opinion. We asked for your intel." The Zephyrian's carapace darkened slightly. Anger or frustration? Blake wasn't sure. He'd spent enough time around Krell to know the alien considered humans reckless, impulsive, a young species barely out of their cradle, playing at war with monsters. Krell activated a secondary display. The hologram shifted, showing the Vorac Swarm's last known trajectory. "They will reach Mars within 72 hours. Earth will follow. The Federation High Command has already written off your system." Blake's jaw tightened. "And why are you here?" Krell hesitated. For the first time, his usual arrogance flickered. "Because I have seen what the Vorac leave behind. Empty husks of worlds. No survivors, no ruins, just silence." The room went still. Blake exhaled slowly, glancing at his officers. Commander Hale, his second, in command, met his gaze with a grim nod. They'd all seen the reports. The Vorac didn't just kill, they erased. Blake turned back to the hologram. "We have contingencies." Krell's mandibles clicked in derision. "Your orbital platforms, your planetary shields. The Vorac will tear through them like paper." A slow smirk tugged at Blake's lips. "Who said anything about defending?" The Zephyrian froze. Blake tapped his wrist. "Com, Chief Engineer Torres status." A gruff voice crackled through. "All stations report ready. Captain, the bait is being set." Krell's antennae twitched violently. "Bait." Blake didn't answer. Instead, he zoomed the hologram in on Earth. The blue-green world spun peacefully, its cities glittering, its orbital defenses seemingly dormant. But as the display enhanced, something became clear. The cities were empty. The orbital platforms were hollow. Krell's exoskeleton paled. This is not real." Blake's grin was all teeth. "Oh, it is real. Just not what you think." The Zephyrian staggered back, his claws gripping the table for support. "You evacuated your homeworld." "Years ago," Blake said. "When we first heard whispers of the swarm." Krell's voice dropped to a whisper. "You used Earth as a decoy." Blake turned back to the display, watching the red markers creep closer. "And they took the bait." Silence stretched. Then slowly Krell straightened. For the first time, something like respect flickered in his alien eyes. "You are either brilliant or insane." Blake chuckled. "Why not both?" Outside, beyond the reinforced walls of Lunar Base, the first warning sirens began to wail. The Vorac were coming, and humanity was ready. The crystalline walls of the Galactic Federation Hall shimmered with refracted starlight as Lisa Hayes stepped onto the speaker's platform. A murmur rippled through the assembled delegates, tentacled Octavians, armored Zephyrians, floating Cerulean orbs, all watching the lone human with varying degrees of pity and disdain. Her heels clicked against the glass, Like floor, the sound swallowed by the vast chamber. High Speaker Vexis unfolded from his elevated throne, segmented limbs stretching to their full 3-meter height. His chitinous face split into a mockery of a smile, compound eyes glinting. Ah, the doomed ambassador arrives. Lisa didn't flinch. She activated the holodisplay with a tap, sending Earth's defense schematics spinning above the assembly. The Vorac Swarm has entered the Oort cloud. We request immediate Federation aid. Laughter erupted from the Vorac delegation, a sound like grinding bone. Vexis waved a clawed hand, and the projection dissolved into static. Your primitive orbital platforms, your chemical-propelled projectiles. His mandibles clicked. The swarm consumes worlds 10 times your technological level before breakfast. As Empyrean Admiral Krell, Lisa noted, shifted in his seat, his exoskeleton darkening with unease. But he remained silent. Lisa's fingers tightened around the podium. We've analyzed Vorac tactics from 12 previous invasions. Their weakness is arrogance. Vexis interrupted, slamming a barbed forearm down. The impact cracked the crystalline surface. You think you've discovered what the Galaxia Collective, the Dyson Architects, the 100 moons of Krellix failed to see. Spittle dripped from his jaws. Your species has existed for a cosmic blink. You are ants lecturing giants. The Cerelion delegation pulsed agreement, their floating orbs swirling indigo. One drifted too close to Lisa, broadcasting directly into her mind. Poor soft thing. We will mourn your extinction. Lisa exhaled through her nose. The air smelled of ozone and alien musk. She tapped her wristpad again. A new hologram bloomed Earth's cities, shining like gems against the blue marble. Then the image split, showing identical metropolises on Mars, Titan, even floating in the atmospheres of gas giants. Vexis froze. Those, Lisa said quietly, are our evacuation sites. 93% of Earth's population relocated over the past 5 years. She zoomed in on the empty streets of New York, Tokyo, Mumbai. What you see here, automated lights, decoy heat signatures, a planet-sized mousetrap. The chamber went utterly still. Even the ever-shifting Cerelion orbs halted mid-rotation. Krell was the first to break the silence. His voice came out strangled. You emptied your homeworld. Lisa met his gaze. We had a hunch the Federation wouldn't help. Vexis lunged forward, claws extended. Lies no species abandons its cradle. This is desperation. A shrill alarm cut him off. The central holodisplay flickered, then resolved into a live feed from the outer solar system. 1,000 black ships, jagged as broken teeth, swarmed past Pluto's orbit. Lisa didn't look at the screen. She kept her eyes locked on Vexis. You said the Vorac erase civilizations. Her smile was colder than the void outside. Funny, we specialize in erasing assumptions. Krell's exoskeleton paled to near transparency. He stood abruptly, knocking over his hydration pod. Federation vessels, mobilize. If the humans' plan works, it already has. Lisa deactivated the hologram with a flick of her wrist. The Vorac just took the bait. Now, who wants to watch what happens next? The Cerelion orbs turned blood, red with panic. Vexis hissed, his carapace vibrating with rage. But Lisa saw it, the first flicker of doubt in those pitiless compound eyes. She leaned in, whispering words meant only for him. You called us ants, but even ants, she tapped the podium, right over the crack he'd made, can bring down an empire. The feed from Pluto zoomed in. The Vorac fleet had reached the asteroid belt, and the asteroids were opening. Captain Blake's boots clanged against the metal grating of the Defiance's engineering deck. The air smelled of ozone and lubricant, the hum of the ship's core vibrating through the floor. Chief Engineer Torres stood before a massive console, her fingers dancing across holographic controls. You sure about this, Captain? She asked without looking up. Once we flip the switch, there is no going back. Blake rested a hand on the railing, staring at the asteroid field displayed on the main viewer. They think we're running scared. Let's show them what running really looks like. Torres grinned, teeth flashing in the dim light. Then let's wake the sleeping giants. Her fingers slammed down on the final sequence. Deep in the asteroid belt, something stirred. A seemingly derelict mining station shuddered, its outer shell cracking away to reveal gun batteries beneath. What had been labeled as abandoned colony outposts on Federation charts unfolded like deadly flowers, their hidden hangars spitting out fighters. And beneath the ice of Ceres, docking clamps disengaged as warships long buried in the rock powered up their drives. Signal the Blackwatch, Blake ordered. Tell them to hold position until the Vorac pass the marker. Torres tapped her earpiece. Blackwatch confirms. They're running dark. On the bridge display, red icons pulsed. The Vorac Armada, a swarm of jagged black ships moving toward Earth. They passed right over the asteroid belt without slowing, their sensors blind to the danger beneath them. Arrogant bastards, Torres muttered. Didn't even bother scanning. Blake allowed himself a small smile. Why would they to them? We're just prey hiding in our burrow. A new voice crackled over the comm. Defiance, this is Outpost Sigma. All batteries online and awaiting your signal. Another voice joined. Ceres defense grid primed and ready. One by one, the hidden stations reported in. Blake listened, counting the voices. 23 outposts, 300 warships, 1,000 railgun emplacements. All silent, all waiting. Torres exhaled sharply. You really planned for this, didn't you? Blake didn't answer right away. His eyes stayed fixed on the Vorac fleet, moving deeper into the system, right into the kill zone. We knew they'd come eventually. The Federation wrote us off. The Zephyrians thought we were doomed, but humanity. He finally looked at her. We don't die easy. A proximity alert chimed. The lead Vorac dreadnought had reached the marker. Time to hunt, Blake said. Torres relayed the order across the belt. Systems whined to life. Targeting arrays locked. Railguns charged. The Vorac never saw it coming. A single shot lanced out from the darkness, punching clean through a Vorac frigate's engines. The ship listed, spewing plasma. Then the void erupted. From every asteroid, every hidden station, humanity's true fleet opened fire. Railgun slugs tore through Vorac hulls. Missile salvos streaked from concealed silos. Fighters poured out of fake debris fields like angry hornets. On the bridge of the Defiance, Blake watched the carnage unfold. The Vorac fleet scrambled, their formation collapsing under the sudden assault. Torres let out a low whistle. They look confused. Blake keyed the fleet-wide channel. All units, press the advantage. Drive them toward the Blackwatch's position. The Vorac ships tried to regroup, tried to return fire. But they were blind. Their sensors couldn't distinguish between asteroids and warships. Their commanders shouted orders over comms, their voices thick with something no Vorac had ever felt before. A transmission cut through the chaos. Defiance, this is Blackwatch. We have them in the kill box. Blake leaned forward. Execute. From the shadow of Mars, the Blackwatch battle group emerged. 20 heavy cruisers, their spinal, mounted cannons glowing white-hot. They fired as one, the synchronized volley ripping through the heart of the Vorac formation. Torres whooped as 3 dreadnoughts exploded. That is how you punch above your weight. Blake allowed himself a moment to watch the flames. Then he opened a channel to the hidden outposts. Sigma, Ceres, all stations, advance and engage. Don't let a single ship slip through. The Vorac were learning the hard way. Earth wasn't the trap. The entire solar system was. The Vorac Swarm descended upon the Sol system like locusts, their jagged black ships blotting out the stars. Overlord Zhorak stood on the bridge of the World Eater, his compound eyes reflecting the blue glow of Earth growing larger in the viewport. His mandibles twitched in anticipation. Scan the planet, he commanded, his voice a guttural rasp. A Vorac technician clacked its claws across the console. Atmospheric readings show minimal life signs, scattered energy signatures. No orbital defenses active. Zhorak's antennae stiffened. This was wrong. The prey species always fought, always screamed. His fleet had consumed 17 worlds, and not one had greeted them with silence. "Deploy the harvesters," he ordered. "Burn their cities. Let them learn fear." The first wave of dropships screamed through the atmosphere, their plasma cannons charging. Below them, Earth's continent sprawled, empty, silent. The harvesters touched down in what should have been bustling metropolises, but the streets were vacant. No screams, no panic, just wind whistling through abandoned towers. "Overlord," the technician hissed. "Thermal scans confirm the cities are empty. No bodies, no signs of recent habitation." Zhorak's claws dug into the command throne. Impossible. The prey could not have evacuated billions so quickly. A human transmission crackled across the comms, a single voice, calm and mocking. "Looking for someone." Zhorak snarled. "Trace that signal." The technician's claws flew over the console. It is coming from inside the planet's crust, deep underground." On the surface, the harvesters advanced through the dead cities, their sensors pinging wildly. Then the ground moved, hundreds of concealed bunker doors slid open. Railgun turrets emerged, their barrels humming with power. Automated defense drones swarmed from hidden silos like angry hornets. The harvesters barely had time to scream before the sky turned white with hypersonic slugs. On the World Eater, alarms blared. "Overlord, we're detecting..." The technician's words died as the orbital platforms woke up. What the Vorac had assumed were derelict stations suddenly hummed to life. Their weapons arrays powering up. The platforms weren't abandoned, they'd been sleeping. Zhorak roared. "All ships, evasive maneuvers. Target those." The first railgun round punched through a Vorac cruiser like paper. Then the second, then the third. The human platforms fired in perfect synchronization. Their slugs tearing through the swarm's formation. Ships that had devoured worlds ruptured like overripe fruit, their hulls splitting under the barrage. "Return fire," Zhorak bellowed. The Vorac fleet unleashed their plasma cannons, but the human platforms shimmered, energy shields flaring to life, absorbing the hits. The platforms weren't just armed, they were shielded. A new voice cut through the chaos. Captain Blake. Broadcasting from the Defiance. "You came all this way for a fight, Zhorak. Shame. We had to disappoint you with the hospitality." Zhorak's exoskeleton darkened with rage. "Where are your people, human?" Blake's laugh was cold. "Oh, we're around, but you're right where we want you." The Vorac Overlord spun to his sensor officer. "Scan the system. Find there." The technician's voice trembled. "Overlord, the asteroid belt. It is moving." Zhorak's blood ran cold. The asteroids weren't rocks. They were ships, hundreds of them, their stealth systems disengaging as they powered up engines. Human warships hidden in plain sight, now breaking cover like wolves from the brush. The technician's next words were barely a whisper. They were never on Earth. Zhorak's mandibles clicked in realization. The cities, the silence, the lack of defense. It had all been a ruse, a decoy. The human transmission crackled again, Blake's voice dripping with venom. "Welcome to the kill zone. Zhorak, hope you brought an appetite." The Vorac fleet scrambled to turn to face the new threat, but it was too late. The human ships were already firing, and the void burned. The void between Mars and Jupiter erupted in silent fury as 1,000 human warships tore through their stealth fields. Railgun batteries spun up with mechanical precision, their magnetic coils humming with pent-up energy. Captain Ryan Blake watched the tactical display on the USN Defiance's bridge as the Vorac fleet, moments ago, a triumphant swarm descending on an undefended Earth, now scrambled to turn their jagged prows toward the real threat. "All batteries, fire at will," Blake said, his voice calm despite the adrenaline surging through his veins. "Helm, bring us about to bearing 02. 7, I want our broadside facing that dreadnought." The Defiance's engines flared as she pivoted in space, her armored flanks bristling with weapon ports. Across the human fleet, similar maneuvers played out as ships emerged from hiding places among asteroids and derelict stations. What the Vorac had mistaken for abandoned human outposts were in fact camouflaged dry docks and armories, maintained in secret for this exact moment. Torres's voice crackled over the comm from engineering. All systems green, Captain. They took the bait, just like we hoped. On the main viewer, the Vorac flagship World Eater loomed like a nightmare-given form, a kilometers-long monstrosity of spiked armor and organic-looking weapon pods. Its escort ships resembled swarming insects around a carcass, their formations breaking apart as human railgun rounds began punching through their ranks. "Direct hit on their lead cruiser," called out Lieutenant Chen from the tactical station. "Their shields aren't calibrated for kinetic weapons at this velocity." Blake allowed himself a grim smile. The Vorac had expected energy weapons, the standard armament of every species in the Galactic Federation. They hadn't accounted for humanity's stubborn insistence on perfecting old-fashioned projectile physics. A shudder ran through the Defiance as a Vorac plasma beam grazed their port side. Damage control teams sprang into action even as the ship's point. Defense lasers swatted incoming missiles from the void. "Return fire, full salvo," Blake ordered. "Target their engine clusters." The Defiance's main battery spoke with thunderous silence, a dozen tungsten rounds accelerating to relativistic speeds in the blink of an eye. On the view screen, the World Eater's aft section erupted in a series of explosions as the superdense projectiles tore through its propulsion systems. Across the chaotic battlefield, similar scenes played out. Human destroyers weaved through the Vorac formation like wolves among sheep, their railguns finding weak points in the alien armor. Frigates launched swarms of drones that latched onto enemy ships, delivering precisely timed electromagnetic pulses that disrupted their systems. The Vorac communications channels erupted in panicked chatter, their guttural language translated by the Defiance's AI. "They were supposed to be defenseless," one commander shrieked. "Where did these ships come from?" Another voice, colder and more controlled, cut through the noise. It was Overlord Zhorak himself, his massive form visible on the bridge of the crippled World Eater. "All ships, regroup. This is a coordinated ambush." Blake tapped his console, opening a fleet-wide channel. His face appeared on every human ship's display. "All units, execute Phase 3. Let's show these bastards what happens when you threaten our home." In perfect synchronization, the human fleet shifted formations. What had been a scattered ambush became a methodical killing machine. Ships moved in coordinated patterns, herding the disoriented Vorac vessels into kill zones, where waiting battleships could pound them mercilessly. The Defiance's weapons officer whooped as another Vorac cruiser disintegrated under their guns. "They're breaking formation, sir. Some are trying to flee." "Let them run," Blake said. "We want survivors to tell the tale." On the World Eater's bridge, Overlord Zhorak bellowed in rage as another explosion rocked his flagship. His multifaceted eyes reflected the dozens of human warships now surrounding his crippled vessel. How did they hide this strength? A human transmission cut through the Vorac comms. Blake's voice was calm, almost conversational. "You made one mistake. Overlord, you assumed we'd defend Earth." Zhorak's mandibles clicked in confusion. "All species defend their homeworld." "Not when it is bait," Blake replied. The transmission ended as every remaining human ship locked weapons on the Vorac flagship. The final moments of the World Eater were recorded by fleeing Vorac scout ships. The massive dreadnought, pride of their fleet, came apart under a concentrated barrage from 3 human battleships. Its reactor core breached in a brilliant flash that momentarily outshone the distant sun. As the light faded, what remained of the Vorac armada was in full retreat, their once proud formation reduced to scattered survivors fleeing toward the outer system. Human ships moved to intercept, but Blake's orders were clear. "Let them go," he told his crew. "We've made our point." On the Defiance's bridge, the crew exchanged exhausted but triumphant looks. The battle had lasted less than an hour, but in that time, humanity had rewritten the galaxy's understanding of their capabilities. Torres leaned against a console, wiping sweat from his brow. "Think they'll believe the reports when they get back?" Blake watched the retreating Vorac ships on the view screen. Oh, they'll believe, and so will everyone else. He turned to his communications officer. Open a channel to Lunar Command. Tell them the trap worked perfectly. Earth is safe. As the message went out across the solar system, hidden bunkers and orbital stations began receiving the all-clear. Millions of humans emerged from years of covert evacuation, ready to reclaim their world now that the danger had passed. The Great Deception was complete. Humanity had sacrificed their pride to protect their people, and in doing so, had proven themselves the most dangerous species in the galaxy. The Federation Hall fell silent as the battle feed flickered to life above the central podium. Lisa Hayes stood motionless, her hands clasped behind her back as the holographic projection expanded to fill the crystalline chamber. Delegates from 100 species leaned forward in their adaptive seats, compound eyes and sensory stalks fixed on the unfolding carnage. Admiral Krell's chitinous plates rattled as he stumbled back from the display. This is impossible. His mandibles clicked uncontrollably, a sign of distress among his kind. The Zephyrian's usually vibrant exoskeleton had paled to a sickly grey. On screen, the Vorac Swarm fleet twisted in space like a wounded beast. Human warships, hundreds of them, emerged from stealth fields and asteroid cover, their railgun batteries flashing in synchronized volleys. The World Eater, Zhorak's flagship, listed to port as its starboard engines detonated in a chain reaction. Escape pods jettisoned in panic, their trajectories erratic. High Speaker Vexis rose from the Vorac delegation's bench, his spiked carapace quivering. Deception. This is some trick of light. Lisa didn't turn to face him. Watch closer. She tapped her wristcom, zooming the feed on the USN Defiance's prow as it carved through a Vorac destroyer. The human vessel's armor glowed cherry, red from repeated impacts, yet its guns never ceased firing. A Celestrian delegate's bioluminescent frills pulsed crimson. Those are Mark 7 railguns. Your species wasn't supposed to have that technology for another decade. We don't share everything. Lisa allowed herself a small smile as another Vorac cruiser exploded, its debris field glittering like malignant stars. Krell gripped the railing, his claws leaving grooves in the polished metal. You used your own homeworld as bait? Needed to draw them into the kill zone. Lisa finally turned, meeting each alien delegate's gaze in turn. The Vorac only understand strength, so we showed them ours. On screen, Captain Blake's voice crackled over the Defiance's comms. All units, converge on Sector Gamma. Faith, let's finish this. The human fleet moved with terrifying precision, flanking maneuvers that should have been impossible at these velocities. Targeting solutions calculated in microseconds, warheads that detonated inside Vorac shields, as if the energy barriers weren't even there. Vexis lunged toward the podium, his barbed forelimbs raised. You'll pay for this treachery. The swarm has consumed 1,000. Lisa's sidearm was out and leveled at his thorax before he finished speaking. The motion so smooth most delegates didn't realize she'd moved. Sit down. Her voice could have frozen stellar plasma. Or I'll demonstrate why humans don't need railguns to be dangerous. The chamber erupted, shouts in a dozen languages. Some delegates called for peacekeepers. Others activated personal defense fields. A Quorvian ambassador actually fainted, their gelatinous body slumping over the bench. Only Krell remained still, his multifaceted eyes locked on the battle feed. The Vorac fleet was breaking. Ships that had devoured entire civilizations now fled in disarray, pursued by human vessels that struck with surgical brutality. You planned this for years, the Admiral whispered. The abandoned colonies, the false weakness, even the evacuation of Earth. Lisa holstered her weapon as Vexis retreated. We learned from history, when an enemy thinks you're weak, you don't correct them. A new transmission overrode the battle feed. Zhorak's face filled the projection, his chitin cracked from bridge explosions. Ceasefire. We surrender. The Vorac Overlord's voice lacked its earlier arrogance. Now it held only terror. Blake's response came through the Defiance's speakers, calm and measured. Surrender accepted. Power down your weapons and prepare to be boarded. The silence in the Federation Hall became absolute. Even Vexis stopped trembling. Krell's voice was barely audible. You're showing them mercy. Lisa nodded toward the feed where human medics were already launching shuttles toward crippled Vorac vessels. We're not them. The Celestian delegates' frills cycled through colors too fast to track. But the Vorac have no concept of mercy. They'll see this as weakness. Let them. Lisa finally sat down, crossing her legs as if discussing orbital weather patterns. Because next time they face humans, they'll remember two things. We beat them, and we let them live. She leaned forward, elbows on knees. Which do you think will haunt them more? On screen, the first human boarding parties breached the World Eater's hull. Instead of execution squads, they carried medical kits and restraint fields. Zhorak's shocked mandible clicks echoed through the hall's sound system. Krell sank into his seat, his exoskeleton dull with what could only be shame. My people voted to abandon yours. We thought you were already dead. Lisa watched as Blake personally helped a wounded Vorac warrior onto a stretcher. That is the funny thing about humans. Admiral, we're hardest to kill when everyone thinks we're finished. The battle feed winked out. In its place, Earth's blue-green image appeared, not as a war zone, but as it had been for centuries. Alive, waiting. The Zeperian Admiral didn't speak again. None of them did. The lesson was too clear, too brutal in its simplicity. The galaxy had miscalculated. And humanity had just rewritten the rules. The wreckage of the Vorac flagship drifted in a slow spin, its jagged hull still venting plasma into the void. Captain Blake floated through the zero-gravity graveyard, magnetic boots clicking against the Defiance's hull as he surveyed the aftermath. Behind him, the last embers of battle flickered out across the solar system. Status report, Blake said, watching as a team of human medics in armored EVA suits jetted toward a crippled Vorac destroyer. Lieutenant Chen's voice crackled in his earpiece. Vorac fleet is 90% destroyed or disabled. Sir, the remaining ships have surrendered. We're collecting survivors now. Blake nodded. Tell medical to prioritize the wounded, even the Vorac. A pause, sir. You heard me, Lieutenant. The Vorac prisoners huddled in the Defiance's brig didn't look so fearsome now, stripped of their weapons and armor. They were just creatures, hollow, their chitin cracked and leaking dark fluid. One of them, a warrior with half its mandibles sheared off, hissed as Blake entered. You come to gloat, Sofkin? It rasped. Blake leaned against the bulkhead, arms crossed. No. The Vorac warrior's compound eyes flickered. Then why spare us? We would have devoured your world, your people, maybe. Blake tilted his head. But we're not you. Across the galaxy, the Federation Hall was in chaos. Delegates shouted over each other, their voices a cacophony of clicks, growls, and telepathic pulses. The battle feed still played on the central hollow display, human ships cutting through the Vorac like a scythe through wheat. Admiral Krell's chitin had gone pale blue, the Zeperian equivalent of shock. He turned to Lisa Hayes, his mandibles trembling. You used your own homeworld as bait. Lisa sipped her coffee unfazed. And we'd do it again. Krell's antennae twitched. The evacuation, how, when? 5 years ago, Lisa said. Slowly, quietly, we moved the population to the outer colonies, to hidden habitats in the Kuiper Belt. Earth was just a shell by the time the Vorac arrived. The High Speaker Vexis, who had mocked her only days before, now stood silent. His carapace had lost its luster. On the Defiance, Chief Engineer Torres wiped grease from her hands as she supervised repairs. Think they'll try again? She asked, nodding toward the Vorac prisoners. Blake watched as a human medic carefully set a Vorac warrior's broken limb. The creature flinched but didn't resist. No, Blake said. Not after this. In the brig, the Vorac warrior stared at the medic tending its wounds. Why, it demanded again. We are your enemies. The medic, a young woman with a scar across her cheek, didn't look up, because it is the right thing to do. The warrior fell silent back on lunar base. The war room was alive with activity. Officers moved between terminals, coordinating rescue ops, salvage, and prisoner transfers. Blake entered to a round of applause, but he waved it off. "Save it for the folks who built the trap," he said. "I just sprung it." Admiral Krell's hologram flickered to life at the center of the room. His posture was different now, less rigid, less sure. "Captain Blake," he began, then hesitated. "The Federation Council has reconsidered its position." Blake raised an eyebrow. "Oh," Krell's mandibles clicked. "They wish to extend an invitation. Humanity is to be granted full membership in the Galactic Federation, with a seat on the High Council." The room went quiet. Lisa Hayes, standing beside Blake, smirked. "Took them long enough." Blake exhaled, rubbing his temples. "Tell the Council we'll consider it." Krell's eyes widened. "You would refuse." "Not refuse," Blake said, "but we'll negotiate on our terms." The message was clear. Humanity wasn't a junior species anymore. As the Defiance's crew celebrated, Blake stepped onto the observation deck. Earth hung in the viewport, blue and green and deceptively peaceful. The Vorac bombardment had scarred its surface, but the damage was superficial. The cities would be rebuilt. The forests would regrow. Torres joined him, handing over a steaming cup of coffee. "Thinking deep thoughts, Captain." Blake took the cup, just wondering what comes next. Torres grinned. "Whatever we want." In the brig, the Vorac warrior watched through the reinforced glass as stars drifted past. The medic had left, but the pain in its limb was gone. For the first time in its life, it wondered what it meant to be merciful, and somewhere in the dark between stars, the galaxy learned a new truth. Never underestimate humanity.